Will do. I can do. So, good morning. Welcome, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening. It's such a delight to be here again at the FDCW, seems to be at the annual conference. And today, I'm really, really pleased and honored to be able to introduce you to Kirsten DeLeo. I've known Kirsten for over 30 years, and I've always admired her vision and personal commitment to her work in palliative care. Kirsten is a meditation teacher, a spiritual care trainer, as well as the author of an award-winning book. The title is Present Through the End, A Caring Companion's Guide for Accompanying the Dying. For over 25 years, Kirsten's worked in palliative care and hospice as an educator, counselor, and a chaplain, both in the United States and in Europe. And for more than 2 decades, Kirsten has served as a senior trainer with a spiritual care program, an international network inspired by the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. More recently, Kirsten's become a member of the Buddhist Ministry a working group at Harvard University. And she's a member also of the steering group for a new chaplaincy network launched by the European Buddhist Union. This winter, Kirsten has been invited to teach a module for the master's course, a module in spiritual care at the University of Basel in Switzerland. What's remarkable about this is the first master's course in spiritual care in the German-speaking countries. So that's just wonderful. Before I pass you on to Kirsten to share her activities and thinking with you, I wanted to let you know that Kirsten will speak. We have an hour together. Kirsten will share her thoughts and whatever she wants to speak about for the next maybe 35 or 40 minutes. But we'll leave a nice space of time for question and answer, because that is really probably something that you'll be motivated to want to ask. Please make notes, maybe during the time that Kirsten's speaking, so that you can put your questions down and we'll check back with you after some time. But we'll definitely have time for your questions. So I think I'm really happy to welcome you, Kirsten. Thank you so much for being part of this conference. Over to you.
Thank you, Marianne and Victoria, and to all of you for having me today. Yeah, I think maybe some of you had already a few hours of work, or you're in the middle of your day. It's the end of the day. Can we just take a few moments to settle and fully arrive? The session is called Present Through the End. So let's just start with the first word of the title, being present, presence, present. I invite you now, just sit in whatever way you are familiar with and comfortable with. And we just sit together for a few moments to bring our mind back home to our breath. And to ourselves and being in our body on the seat. And also in this way to allow our hearts to catch up, because often we are so busy and speedy, we're just slowing down, being mindful of our breath. Nothing special has to happen. Just sitting together, connecting with ourselves, being present, open and aware. So as you sit, I also encourage you, just for now, as we slowly conclude, take a moment to reflect on what actually brought you here to this session. perhaps there is a particular question, a situation, somebody you're caring for or you're preparing to care for, or simply a curiosity for this topic. Good. So if you had your eyes closed, again, open them, and maybe take a moment, if you have it on gallery view, to say hello or just see who's in the room. It's just lovely to see everybody and to connect from all people from all over the world. I'm always very excited. Yeah, hello. Yeah. Marianne, when you introduced me, I always get a bit, when I hear the years and when people talk about decades, it's really, it's kind of scary, we're all getting older. Yeah, but it's good. It's good to be connected. And I think with the pandemic, how hard it has been or still is, I think it also brought home how important our connections are. And maybe some of you, like myself, you reinvigorated some of the old connections and friendships and discovered new friends, and that's so important. So I will be mindful of speaking slowly as we have translation. What I would like to do in this session, just to talk about what it means to being present through the end, but the end of the day, it's experiential. We can talk up and down about this topic, but I would like to give you some tools and some resources. I hope they're helpful for your particular situation. So as you listen, I invite you really listen with your question in mind, something you like to learn for your situation at home or at work, if you're caring professionally. And then, as Marianne said, we have some time to actually go back and forth and share a conversation. So being with people who are dying, accompanying people who are dying, is certainly not an easy undertaking. I think for most of us, I don't know for you, but I think for most of us, it's not something we were taught in school or in our education as when we were raised. And there's so much still, fear, trepidation, uncomfortableness surrounding this topic. Of course, it's very much about encountering our own death and mortality as we are sitting with a person, as we are entering a conversation. So it's quite confrontational in a way, this being present through the end, being present with somebody at the end of life. And I would like to share two stories that both highlight different aspects of this topic, of really being there fully. When I grew up, I'm German, I grew up in Germany. And when I grew up, I had the good fortune to have a role model. With my grandmother showing me how to be present with my dying grandfather. And I will never forget this kindness. And I love to share this story because it's really, for me, in essence, captures the beauty, the sorrow and grief, and the deep connection we are sharing. So when my grandfather was dying, he was cared at home by my grandmother. They were both in their mid-90s. And that's quite an age to be caring for your husband of more than 75 years or so, 70 years. But she was adamant I care for him at home. So when it was really clear now we're entering the phase of dying, I came and spent time with him. And he died on a Sunday morning at 12, lunchtime, German lunchtime, so very in a proper way. But before he died, the day before, my grandma really, and on a much deeper level, she understood that she will lose her husband. Of course, with the war, she had seen much death and suffering, and And then she asked me, because she knew I had started training with hospice at the time. I was in my early 20s. And she asked, what should I do now? How can I possibly say goodbye after 70 years of a shared life? And when you're new in this field, you're really excited, and I said, I know what to do and I know what to tell her. So I did, and it actually turned out to be helpful. I said, why don't you sit down next to him and just share the good things and also the difficult things, and really share your love. That's what I was taught. Share your love openly, but also do not hide away from the difficult parts. And so she listened to me, and she did it. She stood up and went to the bedroom and sat down on his bed. He was still alert at the time and could take it in what she was sharing. So they had this really heart-to-heart talk. He couldn't talk anymore, but you could see he was engaged and nodding and shedding a tear. And of course, at the end, there were lots and lots of tears, but also laughter. There was also much joy in that connection. And so she did her work, and she also let him know that he could go, because that's also important, to let people know you can go. I'm not holding you back. It's very difficult to let you go. And please know I'm okay. Yeah. And I have support. These are important messages. So when he died the next day, we washed him together. My grandmother, my sister-in-law, who's a palliative care nurse, which was fantastic, and myself, we washed him. We put on his best Sunday suit, and we laid him out on his bed. And I stayed with him, and my grandma slept with him one more night. We kept him one more night, and she stayed with him. For her, it was the most natural thing to have her husband there. It was not a corpse. And I remember I woke up very early in the morning the next day, and I could see the light on in the bedroom. So I kind of walked over there and just said, Grandma, is everything okay? And she said, she was up in a way, was sitting in her bed, and said, I realized, wow, this is my new life. I have to change. My life is changing now. This is my new life. What do I do with that now? And I just lay down next to her, and we talked about her new life, how to live without my grandfather's presence. And that was so moving. There was my grandfather present still in his physical form, and my grandmother in her nightie, and I'm in my nightgown, and snuggled up together. And as when I grew up, I always stayed with them in the bed, as a child in the middle. So that was just full circle for me, and for her was so natural and normal. And I like to share the story to really, because death, there is so much fear and panic and anxiety, but death, if a long-lived good life, is the most natural thing. And if we treat it as a natural thing and with love, we can really take care of each other. So I'm really grateful for my grandmother and her love and sharing this. And so it's in a way, presence through the end is quite simple. As human beings, we make it complicated. So death and dying, caring for the dying, has been medicalized to a large degree, but it's deeply human. So I really encourage you, wherever this finds you now, really think about how you can reclaim and make it more human, caring for your loved one or for your patient. And there's another story to iterate. I had also some years ago a patient who became my friend, and he was dying of AIDS. And at the time, I was at the height of the pandemic, and I was in San Francisco, where I used to live many, many years. And he was in a hospital, but this time was clear this he won't recover. But he asked all his friends and his community, take me home, I would like to die at home. And initially we were not prepared, but he said, well, we have to rise up to the occasion. So we did, and we cared for him at home. And when the first day I came, I sat next to him and said, okay, his name was John, what do you need? And he said, just be my friend, just be my friend. So that's again a very humbling message. He didn't want to have experts around him. He didn't want to have, he knew I was at the time already, worked in hospice. He just wanted to have friends, equals, human beings, friends around him. So we took care of him and he died at home. It was not an easy death. It was messy and challenging. But what all kind of really pulled us all through was the love for him. And I also know that when the people I'm caring for, because I cared for many, many people, and over the years, I think hundreds, what really has helped me to this day is really this feeling of closeness and connection and love. So the person might be entirely different background, skin color, race, what have you. But we are all humans. So the conference is called Compassion and Wisdom. So this is where the compassion comes in. So with the compassion to see clearly our human condition, our confusion and anxieties and fears and ignorance, and also at the same time, equally, our profound capacity for love, for compassion, and especially for forgiveness at the very end of life, because forgiveness is a big topic. So, and without wisdom and understanding, compassion would not be complete. So compassion is a natural expression of wisdom. The understanding, I will die too, I will die too. And that's, I think to this day, one of the toughest lessons. We may feel at the other side of the bed, we are safe. Yeah, I'm safe here, you are dying, but I'm okay, I'm still healthy. So this is again a very humbling message, and then really fully understanding, I will die too. And then really connect from that place with the other person. So with compassion, as I said, it's the most natural expression of wisdom. They go together. Without understanding, I may feel very connected and I may feel empathy. But without the wisdom aspect and the understanding, I would not know how to help. Yeah, I may see there's a need, the person is maybe in pain or needs to talk about something, but I wouldn't know how to do it. So they actually, right there in caring for the dying, they go together. Compassion and wisdom, and they're really needed. And they grow over the years. I've seen also with training people, they grow by actually by being present. That doesn't mean I have to know every single answer before I even start. I have some people in trainings that take one training after the next, thinking I have to be ready and perfect. But as I said, just be my friend, be another human being. You are all that is needed. Ultimately, you are all that is needed. And to show up as another human being with all I show up with all my flaws, and a lot of my I now care mostly for people who are very early on, who are just given a diagnosis. I work in a spiritual care center in Ireland, and it's a place where people can come to terms with what's happening and this huge shift in their life. So it's then to say sometimes I don't know what to say. I mostly listen. But the most important message then, if we don't know what to say it and say, but I'm still here. I'm staying. Yeah, I'm here. And this is where the care really comes in. So I'm hoping I speak slow enough because I can get quite, excited about this topic. So one of the main message I also would like you to really take home and with you. So you don't have to be perfect. You are all that is needed. Because so often we think there is something lacking. We are not good enough. Because being confronted with dying and also grief and sorrow, deep hurt comes up and insecurities, but to really know we are fundamentally okay. We may not always be skillful as we wish to be, but people feel our good intentions, and that's why it is important. I encourage you, whenever you're going to see somebody, take a moment and set your intention, set your motivation, a compassionate motivation, perhaps with something very, very simple like, may I be useful? May I be beneficial? May I, really, this visit, may it really relieve suffering. Yeah. And I see just somebody saying, yeah, we are perfect in our imperfections. So we all share this basic goodness, or what's sometimes in Buddhism called Buddha nature. But at the same time, we have this very messy human condition. So it's always there. Shadow is light. There is, you will encounter, some of you are familiar. There's deep grief and sorrow. And there's also great joy and connection and really, really, really deep love. So really in the beginning, really connect with that place, and before you just take a moment, 30 seconds, before you go into the room, before you make the phone call, and connect with your motivation. I find it helpful when I go into somebody's room, the door handle is a really good reminder as I kind of push the door open and go in. This really having a reminder, or a handshake. That's a good in the beginning, to set this intention very clearly. I love Maya Angelou, the American poet. She said, people don't remember necessarily what you said or what you did, but they always will remember how you make them feel. So if you perhaps caring for somebody who is suffering or living with dementia, with Alzheimer's, this can be very, very hard, because this person dies, the relationship with the person dies the way before the physical death. No, we lose the person, we lose that relationship. So it's good to remember, the more we can be open and spacious and loving, they pick up on that energy. A good friend, a Zen teacher, once told me, and she said, no, the most important person when it comes to accompanying or caring for anybody in any caring relationship is that you're less anxious than the person you're caring for. I think that's pretty sound advice, being less anxious. Yeah. And this is where all our compassion practices come in, the sitting, meditation, mindfulness of the body, walking meditation. We can use all this to really ease our anxieties and worries, and come home to that sense of connection and love, because love is really, and compassion is the powerful antidote to fear and anxiety. That's how we can really connect and drop into that, really drop into that. Maybe as as you listen, I invite you now, let's just for a moment do something practical. And just keep in mind one person in your life right now who's having a hard time. Maybe this person, this person has entered the dying process, gotten a very serious diagnosis of cancer or a life-limiting illness, or an elderly parent. Just picture that person right now in your mind's eye. And then try just for a moment now to see the person not in their usual role, in their function, how they function in our lives, like the parent or the friend or the person who helps me, my mentor. Because we put people in boxes and that's hard for them to get out. So just see them now as they are, as another human being, just like you. Just like you. The person has hopes and dreams just like you. The person has fears or anxieties, just like me. And just like me, the person really yearns to be seen and respected, wants to matter, just like me. So if you just seeing the person as another you, as just like me, not so different. It's hopes and fears, and also worries, old hurts, things they maybe cannot forgive themselves, things they're really carrying and have a hard time letting go, and maybe they also are really familiar with a self-critical voice and distressed. At the same time, they also had joyous moments in their life, just like ourselves, just like me. So you can, I just wanted to give you a very, very on-the-spot practice. You might be familiar with that, another you, just like me. I just did a first training after 2 years of online teaching. Last weekend I did a training, and it was very different with people in the room. It was a small group, and we did that as a longer practice, as a guided practice, another you, just like me. And it's all we could do that weekend. It was amazing to see that it's all, so people were really real and saying, wow, this is really tough. This is really hard. To really move out of my self-centered view. And it's not out of ill will, but just really seeing how much we are holding on to that. And so just is about to soften it and to warm it up. It's a bit like a softener, fabric softener. So I hope you had some insights and to see of how we also hold ourselves separate from the person we are caring for and accompany. And I like the word, I tried the word caring, because caring implies there is a certain dynamic, with caring, or in a caring relationship and a caregiving relationship. With caregiving, there's clearly a receiver and somebody who's receiving. And there's immediately an inequality. And with this inequality, there can also come a disconnect. I'm not saying we shouldn't be knowledgeable. Yes, I appreciate palliative care and all the medical things we can do and we need to do. But also the human connection is very important. We have to remember that when we help a person,
I think Kirsten is having issues with her connection.
Yeah. She's coming back.
Let me just turn.
Kirsten, if you can hear us, we've lost your sound for a little while. Try talking again. Let's see.
Yeah, she may need to rejoin again, or sure. Have you got her mobile phone, Maria?
Sorry, what did you say, Angela?
I said, have you got her her mobile phone? Well, she will rejoin. It's okay. She will rejoin. She's
right, and she probably heard you say that, and that's maybe when she decided to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to just ask perhaps if anyone has any thoughts so far while we wait for Kirsten to rejoin us. Anything came up for you in terms of questions, or maybe just a comment about what we've been listening to so far, how, if it's touched you or been helpful or whatever. So if anyone would like to speak, Angela, how would you like them to indicate that? Oh, she's back.
Okay.
Well done, Kirsten.
I know, this is a nightmare for any moderator.
Don't worry, I was just asking people to share back in case they had comments, so don't worry. My Zoom screen froze during 7
So maybe this is a good and natural place. Maybe the internet gods were intervening. I should stop talking.
Well, maybe we can take some time to get some feedback, as I just was talking to people, saying if you've got any feelings or things that have come up for you to this point. And then you can maybe, if you want towards the end, you can come back and talk a little more, depending on what questions. So yeah, any feedback, comments, or maybe questions for Kirsten that have come up for you this far, please just, shall we put hands up, Angela, or would you like them to use
Sorry, if they use the raise hand function, the raise hand function in the reactions, that's easier because they come to the top of the screen.
Okay, great. So yeah, down it should be at the bottom of your screen, the raise hand, and we'd love to hear from you.
Please, Hui, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Hello, Kirsten. Thank you very much for coming to us. When I was doing hospice volunteer work, I encountered a prisoner who was brought into the ward, and his whole persona was a very hardened, angry, bitter person. And how do we, of course, as a hospice training, I always say silence is such a precious and important skill. And so I didn't have any conversation with him. I just offered him the juice, which I had in my hand at that time. But I was just thinking, how do you comfort a person who's very bitter and who's at a very hard life? You know, you don't want to come up with cliches. Yeah. Because they have been disconnected from society for many years.
Yeah.
So how do you really help,
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for this question. Because it's not always this Hollywood ending, or this peaceful death we all yearn for or would like to facilitate that is then happening. I worked for many, many years in the last open ward in the US. We had 28 patients in one room. And so they mostly were people from San Francisco, from the streets, and they never had a home. maybe in 40, 50 years, this was their first home. And so what you're describing, I'm really familiar with, and I've seen it. And I would say just do not have the expectation to fix that person's life, to heal everything in the last few days or weeks. Just be there, and also don't let their bitterness deter you from caring, because our care can be sometimes too much for the person, because it reminds them, our kindness, of what's lacking or has been lacking in their life. So be ordinary, do things they enjoy doing, have a smoke with them. I don't know, I got a secondhand smoke. I'm not a smoker, but just do ordinary things, they enjoy, not what you think they should be doing with the last few days of their lives, So drop your expectations, drop your agenda, just be present. And usually what I've seen, that or watch their favorite TV show, whatever it is, when you sit down next to them and spend time, more and more, they may open up. In these ordinary situations, all of a sudden something kind of peaks up and they share it, and they may close down again. But they also feel, this person may feel, oh, it's actually safe here. They have to feel safe. They really have to feel safe. So you being willing there in silence, with good humor, and just as an ordinary being, just be a friend, also share about your life, as well. That's also something. People like to get to know us as well, especially if you're hospice volunteer, you have more time, and do not give up. Stay. Do not give up. Just stay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kirsten, for that. Thank you, Joel. Thank you for whatever you've been doing and have done in the past to help.
Thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else who'd like to just go down to the bottom, and it's in reactions? Yeah. The first one, the first little, here we go. So Helena is saying to us, to everyone, my husband's cancer has become more aggressive, and there's a chance that he may not make Christmas. It will be the first time that he will be able to share it with his, it will be the first time that he will be able to share it with his adult children and grandchildren for many years. My role as carer and wife, etc., is so hard. How can I be less anxious than he is? How can I manage this precious time when he has no family nearby to help? And how can I be fully present when he is unwilling to share with anyone else? I have access to friends and counseling, a lifeline for me. Over to you, Kirsten.
Yeah. Helena, warm hello. I'm really, it's good to know that you have support. That would have been my first question. What is your support circle? Because this is not work. This is not, accompanying the dying is not work we can do alone. It needs to be a community effort. So the more people you can bring in to help you, yourself, to be present for him, the better. If it's really coming to the end, just again look at what's important to him now.
Kirsten, you're freezing up. I would recommend that maybe you choose not to show your video, but just to
now. And
if you think, yes, there you go, Kirsten. That should make it much easier with your connection.
Yeah, my internet connection goes off, and I'm sorry. We have a windstorm here. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. Just as long as we can hear you, that's the most important. We've seen your beautiful face.
Yeah, exactly. So just really focus on what's positive. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh has this really beautiful phrase: "Water the seeds of joy." See what's important to him. Where does he find the meaning in the life he's lived? celebrate all his accomplishments. So really focus on what's positive, and express your love and what you cherished in your relationship. And maybe over time he may be able to allow other people to be there, and ask him, who do you like to have around you now? Yeah, who is important? Maybe the people can also call or write, leave messages, and also let him know that's it's hard for you as well, because often we trying to protect the person who is dying, and this trying to protect kind of really can block us and be a barrier of really being present. Just let know, how can I support you now? What's important to you now? Yeah. And keep going really to your resources of friends and counseling as your lifeline. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that's helpful, Helena.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Helena, for sharing your question. I think it's helpful to know that many of us will face those kind of questions. Great. Thank you, Kirsten, for your answer.
Can I say something? You know, last year, I think we try, when the speaker has issues with the video, if we all turn our camera off, sometimes that helps with the connection. So I'm going to turn mine off, and please, if you can just stop your videos, you know, just and then we leave Kirsten, see if that helps her with her video.
Leave her all alone. We're going to abandon you.
No, I'm sorry, but this worked last year with yeah.
Well, let's see if we please do come in if you have any questions, folks. We'd be very happy to hear from you, and we'll take a minute to just allow us to think about those things. And if you had notes during the conversation, that something important for you. Kirsten, while we're waiting for people to ask a question, I have a little one myself, and I hope you won't mind me jumping in and asking it. But there's a woman that I've really enjoyed reading called Kathleen Dowling Singh. She's written The Grace of Dying, and she talks about a point when she sat, as you have, with many dying people, where there's a point where, and this is the grace that she talks about, when the person turns within and accepts their death and approaches it with a kind of, I wouldn't say optimism, but at least some more comfort. And I wonder if you could speak to that in your own experience, because that might be something that we could would be useful.
This is a very beautiful expression, grace, or this blessing. And yes, what you're saying, or what she's describing, is this inner work that people have to do, we all have to do as we're approaching our own death and dying. I've seen it with people, they grow inwards. So we are kind of outwardly kind of open and distracted and engaged in life. But people who are, especially when death is imminent, people kind of, their life shrinks, and it becomes smaller and smaller, and they're growing in what I then would describe as growing inward. That's a very internal world they're entering. They also may, of course, then in the dying process, sleep more, be more quiet, have also very vivid dreams, and also process their lives, or concluding their lives in different ways, through dreaming, through being quiet, and entering this really internal world. And I've seen people being really at the end very content, because there is some hidden or secret grace or blessing that arrives in often unexpected ways. So maybe some, I've been at deathbeds where it was really, really hard. Maybe the pain couldn't be managed, and that happens rarely, but that can happen. And it's very painful to watch, just depending on the disease process and also the internal, state of mind of the persons in their life. If they have many broken relationships, so that can also manifest in the physicality of their dying process. So I remember one time that we were caring for a very young man. He was in his early 30s, and he was dying, and his death was really difficult due to his disease. And all we could do, the whole hospice and palliative care team, was to sit with him, just to sit with him. And at the very end, this was so hard for him. You could see this effort to get out of this body, for a young man to get out of this body. And this was so hard, so much hard work. And his family was present. They were, I think, from Korea. They were physically not close, and the family didn't touch him. But they were present in the room. They didn't say a word, but they were present. And then he died. And after this really struggle, there was such a peacefulness in the room that I've never had experienced since before then. That when he really were able to completely let go, that peacefulness, you could feel it. It was tangible, and that's something also the family could feel, and there was love in the room. And the mother came back the next day to pick up his belongings, and then shared with the team, with the help of a translator, that they never had talked about love with her son and with her family. But that was the time she could really feel it. And of course she was crying, but for her that was the gift he gave them, and they were sharing. So this is a grace, this is what I would call grace or blessing. And there are these magic moments, and if you really, sometimes they happen only when we completely let go and really pray from the bottom of our hearts, whatever we believe in, or just an SOS, anybody out there and needs support and help, that it arrives in these magical ways.
Thank you. We're really happy if folks want to jump in, please do. Just let us know. And the title and author, I'll write that into the chat for you, Eleanor. It's a lovely book, and Catherine Dowling Singh is a wonderful writer, very inspiring. And if we have any, how do we say that one? You've had your hand raised. Do pop back in.
Hui.
Yes,
Hui.
Okay. Okay, so your first name is Hui.
My question, or somebody else that wants to ask before me?
No, if there is someone else, we'll certainly go ahead and ask your question, and then we can jump in and ask. We've got plenty of time.
Sometimes the dying person asks the big question, like, I'm afraid, what will happen to me after death? So I remember the early days of hospice training, we were advised that when such questions get asked, it's good to return the question to the patient. What do you think will happen, or where do you think you're going? Is there updated advice, or is this still the thing that is this still the kind of response that we should be using for such questions? Because the other person may be a totally different faith, so so
it's probably still one of the best responses to give it back to the person and say, what do you feel or think? What is your belief or your question? What do you think might happen? is there anything you're worried about that might happen or could happen? You know? So instead of kind of imposing our belief system or our thoughts, or so that's still very it's timeless advice, I would say. So, but sometimes the person may also really want to know from you what you think, to helps them in because if you've never thought about it, then it might be helpful to hear what other people are thinking about. So I would say if the person is interested and open to hear what you and directly asked you, then share that, you know, my belief is A and B, and my question, also share your questions. So I'm wondering about, you know, is there afterlife? Yes, I do believe very clearly. What the dying person, what will give them great comfort, because the fear is will it be painful? Yeah. Is there a complete void? And depending on the situation, as I remind people, all the love in your life and you experienced and given will still be there. It's not wasted. It's not disappearing. Yeah. So that's also that the fear, I'm losing everything, and who am I? So if you can give reassurance through our presence and staying with them at the very threshold, it can be it's comforting. Yeah. But also the downside, maybe let me just say that with these really deep existential or spiritual question, religious question, to see is their religious or spiritual belief also brings them pain. I was once with also another young man, and he was afraid of the fires of hell. So his point of refuge or comfort at that point, when he most needed it, wasn't available, because he was afraid of hell and all the things he has done in life, and he thought he was unforgivable. So then to bring the message of love in whatever way we can, and to remind them that you are lovable, and you're forgivable. So that's the work.
Thank you. That's great. We're still open to questions. Kirsten was absolutely sure you'd have lots of questions, and I certainly do. But you know, it's been a topic close to my heart. Victoria, yes, please do ask your question. Hi, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. I'm so enjoying what you're sharing. I find it really moving. I just wanted to touch on something you said about often we think we're not good enough, we're hard on ourselves, we criticize ourselves. This is a theme that's coming up throughout our conference. I'm noticing each speaker is mentioning it. It's making me think, why is it we find it so hard to offer compassion to ourselves? Maybe you can say something about that.
I mean, there are many reasons. One reason is we may not have never experienced in our life and how we were raised in the Western culture and our families. I was raised, for example, you would never dare to say, I love you in my family. In German, you say, I have love for you. So I was shocked when I moved to America. Strangers say, oh, I love you. It's like, what do you mean? So it's just a matter of how we were brought up, what we experienced, but also I would also say that the self-critical voice is not. We shouldn't see it as an enemy. So when the self-critical voice, oh, I should say something now, I don't know what to say. You should know what to say, and you kind of talk yourself mentally into a frenzy, or you're really deeply hopeless. This voice is there actually to encourage you to do better, because it knows you can do better. Unfortunately, how that mechanism works, it's not working. yes, trying to cheerlead us, but it's not helping. So if we will really have then compassion for that voice or for that habit of putting ourselves down, instead, well, I know you're trying to motivate me here and trying to support me, but right now this is not working. Yeah, so to have a bit of spaciousness around that. So it's not to just put it down, oh, I'm doing this again, I'm failing here again, but to say, oh yeah, okay, this is this mechanism. This mechanism is trying to help me to do better, but it's an old thing and it doesn't work. I've outgrown it. Yeah. I don't know, Victoria, if that makes sense. How
very helpful. Thank you so much, Kirsten.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Because we often tend to then push things away, and that's not helpful either.
Thank you.
Maybe we push them. Thank you, Victoria. And maybe we push them away because we don't know how to deal with them. And you've just given us a suggestion of how to deal with them. So that maybe that'll allow them to be easier to confront or to manage.
Yeah.
It's the thought. Because sometimes it's a lack of skillfulness in being able to deal with
and also to know we are in an extraordinary situation, at the bedside in the presence of death, So of course it can be the most challenging experience of our entire life if we have never thought about it, never seen it, never experienced it before. So it's natural that all the insecurities come out and manifest. So be really, really extremely extra kind to ourselves.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so anybody else have perhaps a last or next to last question for Kirsten? We're coming to the end of our hour together, but jump in if you'd like to.
There is something in the chat, Marian.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you. We're just so busy talking, we didn't see the chat. Okay. Hello, Kirsten. May I ask you, do you often cry while caring for a dying person? I worked in a hospice in Moscow for 1 year, and for the first 7 or 8 months, I cried every day, and then suddenly I became indifferent, not a single tear. It was a sign for me that I had burnt out, and I left the hospice. Thank you very much. And I can't tatla. I don't know. Don't read Russian, sorry. Thank you very much for that question. That's what.
This work, being in the presence of what you're describing, can be emotionally very draining, and if we really keep resonating with the sorrow and the pain and the grief and the suffering. And yes, sometimes I cry and when I'm really moved and can be cathartic and is very human. But if it becomes like every day and it becomes too much, I encourage you to look at really that we haven't touched upon that yet. Sorry. The difference between empathy and compassion. With empathy, we kind of resonate with the person, we keep resonating. And with compassion, we bring in more the wisdom aspect. We know there's suffering, but we also know there is basic goodness. And we know there's suffering I may not ever be able to reach. And to be okay with that. That is to really not despair. And so it's good to take time out. And this work is really, really important. Do things that bring joy back into your life. Play with children, go out into nature, fill yourself up. But also allow the work to fill you up. But don't expect it to fill you up entirely. I think that's it's a really fine line and balance. We can try and aspire to open our heart indefinitely, but infinitely, but we're also humans, so we need kindness and care, and self-care is really, really important. Yeah, so thank you, Tatiana.
Wow, thank you.
Sorry, I don't speak Russian, so.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. That's been so helpful. Anybody has a last question? May I ask a last question myself, since I'm being so cheeky about this? I had a friend who a very close friend, who chose to say goodbye to his family and stay alone for the last 2 days of his dying process. Have you got anything to say about that? And he was a Buddhist practitioner, as it happens. And he made that choice quite, wasn't out of sadness or suffering, but just a clear decision.
Yeah. If you think about it, Marianne, it's just in our lives, all our relationships, they can support us, right? They support us right now. But at the end, when we know we have to say goodbye, it might be too much. You know, if I think about it, I had a conversation with my husband, and I'm still not sure if I would like to have him at my bedside. I'm not sure if I can let go, you know? It might be just too hard, honestly. And I've seen it with people. If you be the person who you're closest to, that might be hard. And you wait till the person leaves the room to go. Yeah. So it's
exactly
what
what it is. Yeah, interesting. Thank you. That's
So don't feel anybody who felt like I wasn't there. Maybe that was also you gave the person a gift so they can go freely. They still have your love, but it would have been too hard.
Thank you so much. That personally is very helpful for me because that's exactly what my mother did. I was with her for 24 hours and I stepped out of the room. She had 2 friends with her and she died whilst I was just taking a break outside.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really resolved that one for me, but maybe for others too.
Good, my dear.
Thank you. And thank you, Kirsten. We're really up on our time here. I don't think we've got any last questions, but really it's been a wonderful time. And the video will be shared very soon on the website. And for those of us who are here or would like to share it with others, you can go to the registration pages and there will be videos. I think this will be a very precious part of our conference this year. And I'm really appreciating all that you're doing. And again, give us the name of your book and tell us who's the publisher.
It's Present Through the End. I actually have it here on the stack of books to put my computer on to be higher. Because not right now, I'm not at home. It's Present Through the End. Hold on. And here it's Present Through the End. A Caring Companion's Guide for Accompanying the Dying. It's been translated into Dutch and German. And we're waiting for the French.
And who's publishing this one? Who's publishing it?
Shambhala.
Lovely.
Shambhala,
great.
Yeah. So you can get it on Amazon. And also you can just look at my website. There are other resources, kirstendeleo.com. And also if you like to have questions or anything bubbles up, be free to be in touch.
Brilliant. Yes. Thank you. And I'm sure if they contact the office, then the office will pass any messages on to you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks to Angela for her wonderful tech and her calm support of all little problems that we encounter. Thanks to Victoria, thanks to everyone. And Kirsten, I hope to see you soon because I have lots more questions for you.
Good, thank you everyone. Be well.
Thank you guys.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you,
Kirsten.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.